Window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm get to the bag. Ayy, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast. Ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss. Ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Revenova, the official TMS provider for the Freight Coach. You guys, I've been a broker for a long time, and the tools that are at your disposal with Revenova help you eliminate bouncing between systems, which improves your accuracy when you are managing multiple tasks throughout your workday. Plus, it's built into the Salesforce cloud, so your CRM is fully integrated with your TMS, eliminating yet another silo. In today's day and age, you are definitely concerned about the safety of your data. With Revenova, it's fully protected. They have cutting-edge security that keeps your information safe so you can focus on what matters most, and that's growing your business. Speaking of growing your business, with Rate and Lane IQ, you get real-time pricing and route recommendations, helping you optimize costs and improve operational efficiencies, which ultimately helps you make smarter decisions. If you are like me and have recurring shipments from non-EDI customers, they have intuitive cloning features that let you easily replicate previous shipments, saving both shipper and carrier rates with just a few taps. If you are ready to learn more, visit www.revenova.com to request a demo. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. This is your first time tuning in. Welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Monday, everybody. I am riding solo today because it's post-holiday. And frankly, I just hope everybody came back to work with the 10 fingers that they left with on last Thursday. I hope you guys all had a happy 4th of July out there. And yeah, we're going to, like I said, we're going to ride solo today. So we'll be breaking down some industry headlines. Obviously, all the links, all the articles will be uploaded into the show notes. And then we'll be doing my favorite segment, which is This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. You guys, we're going to jump in with that right away. This is 100% viewer submitted, you guys. If you guys want your lane broken down on the show, I need you to email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com. And again, you guys, I'm just here to teach you guys how I personally read freight markets as I'm going out there and bidding on freight, whether it's short-term, long-term, however that looks. And I know, like right now in particular, there's so much noise out there about how crazy and chaotic things are. And I'm never going to sit here and say that it's not that way, but we're paid to find the stability. So that's what I'm going to sit here and help you guys out with. So today's lane, Omaha, Nebraska to Columbus, Ohio. As you guys can see, and again, if this is your first time tuning in, when I'm looking at a lot of this stuff, the first thing I always pay attention to is the miles, because days of the week greatly affects the rates, okay? So if this is a Thursday to Monday lane, for example, it's going to be exponentially higher than Monday. Pick Monday, deliver Wednesday, because that added days of transportation. People just look to be compensated for their time, right? Shocking. Who would have thought? But most importantly, you guys, right now more than ever, we need to look for that stability marker, okay? And this lane has been very stable. All right. Very stable throughout all of this. So that's why I think it's very important that when we see national averages, when we see tender rejections, when we see certain things out there, we got to remove the fact that this might not apply to the lanes that I'm moving. And most importantly, you guys, when you're looking at this data set, like I've always said, just because the rates are higher, it doesn't mean that the lane's not performing the same. So now that we've kind of passed through a lot of that early chaos and things have stabilized, which they very much have, data doesn't lie here. If we're looking at this from April through June, you guys, we haven't broke, we're looking at $2,250 to $2,300, right? So over a 90-day period. Now, granted, there was a little bit of a spike here over the 4th of July holiday. I would expect as the more and more things start to trickle in, that's going to increase a little bit more because there's post-holiday capacity constraints that happen literally every single year for the most part. But most importantly, I want you guys to look at this, okay? If you look at back in 2025, granted, the rate's different. All right, so we're not talking about the monetary here. I want you to talk about how the lane performs. It was stable in June, July, and August here, a little bit of an increase in September, but this lane was very stable. And even though the rate's higher right now, things have stabilized on this lane based on what I'm seeing here. Now, is this every single load that you're going to move on this lane is going to perform within this metric? Absolutely not. I operate in the real world, you guys. I don't operate in fantasy land. There's a lot of stuff that comes in, whether it be last minute, whether there's going to be a change in it. Now it's going to be a 1 pick 2 drop, or it's got to, pick up whatever, 11 o'clock at night. It's got to deliver at 6 a.m., just unfavorable transit times, whatever that looks like. There's a lot of factors that come into play. But again, we're paid to find the stability out there on these lanes, you guys. We're not paid to fearmonger and sell our customers on how, everything's chaotic, diesel this, Middle East conflict and capacity, blah, 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 blah. Like they literally pay us to find and be the calm amongst the storm. Like let everybody else out there fearmonger in their sales tactics. This lane is about as stable as I've seen. And we break down three lanes a week on this show, you guys, and we've been doing it now since like February. So the fact of the matter is we've reached a point on this lane. I would assume outside of this week, I've seen post-holiday hangovers last a couple of weeks. So I don't want to sit here and say by July 20th, for example, but things are going to stabilize. This lane has stabilized and it's performing almost identical to how it was at this time last year, albeit a higher rate. Okay. So you need to take that into consideration because at the end of the day, you guys, the rate's the rate. All right. I cannot control the rate, especially out in the open market when you're playing in the spot market. Now, if you're on contract, I'm assuming you're probably wearing it a little bit on this one, but if you're in a spot market situation, I would be very much quoting the exact same. I'm not going to tell you guys what to quote because I don't want to cost you any money, but if I'm looking at the data set that's right here, mark up how you see accordingly, however you do, and I would stay there. All right, I would stay there because from what I'm seeing, this lane has stabilized, and I would bet it's going to continue to stabilize here and remain the same probably throughout the rest of the summer. So if this is your lane out there, I would let it rip. Honestly, I would let it rip. That's how I would personally be doing it. And the beauty of what I say here, you guys, is like I actually move freight. All right, I got 9 pickups going on today. I had 6 deliveries already pre 7 a.m. Okay, so like I'm in the trenches doing that with you guys. If this was my lane, I would be very bold in me quoting it and keeping it the same here because like that's just kind of how we operate. And that's just what we do on every lane that we're moving right now for our current customers, right? We remove the spikes that happen. We eat it during those times and we service. All right. That's got to be your main point of emphasis no matter what. Communication will always go down as the biggest value add you can bring into your customer. Service obviously is equally important, but again, you need to find this stability in the chaos. All right. Let everybody else fearmonger. You go in there and operate. All right. Nothing that I've seen out here during this market shift that's been going on. Anybody who's been in the industry longer than a couple of years, this is business as usual. All right. This is business as usual. So if this is your lane, Omaha to Columbus, let it rip. It's all yours. It's about as stable as you're going to find out there. That's This Week in Freight powered by my friends over at DAT. Again, you guys, if you guys want your lane broken down, email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com. All right. We do drive-in, reefer, flatbed. Those are the 3 majors that we run. We do this 3 times a week, and we're going to continue to do it, you guys, because no matter what, we got to find we got to find a way to move the freight. right? Like you can't sit there and constantly go back and forth with your customers on everything. It's not as chaotic as people want to make it out to seem. Now, it's not easy. I'm never going to sit here and say that it's easy. It's just not as chaotic as people want. And if you're going to go out there and make anything happen, you guys, be the one who brings that sense of calm in the storm, and you will separate yourself so much more than everybody else out there in the market, because a lot of people don't know how to handle these situations. Everybody's good when it's easy, all right? And I'll end with that, and then we're going to get into some articles, you guys. Everybody's good when it's easy. Very few people know how to execute when things aren't going the way that they want, and they can't sit there and bang their drum in their chest about how great they are at their job. So just be the one who's out there. Communication, communication, communication. All right. I cannot stress that enough. If there's anything you guys take away from any of the content that I put out there when you're servicing customers inside of transportation, over communicate. I have never once had a customer say, please stop letting me know what's going on with my freight. All right. Not one time. I've had plenty of shippers who've came on this show, and their number one complaint with their network is nobody lets them know what's going on with their freight. I had another friend of mine who's a shipping manager who's came on the show a few times. He said it publicly on this show. He's like, you can have a bad day, a bad week, or a bad month of service. You cannot have a bad day of communication, though. So take that for what it's worth, you guys, as we're going out here and trying to move freight, building your book of business, whatever it is, building your business, you guys, there's a solution out there for all of this. But now let's dive in. We're going to be breaking down 3 articles here, or as many as we can get here, because sometimes I go off on some tangents on some stuff. But the first article is going to be from overdriveonline.com. And this one is white label ELD cheater network uncovered by the NMFTA research. Now, you guys can see the NMFTA's logo at the bottom of my screen. They've been longtime supporters of this show. We've talked about this on the show in the past, and they put this out there. So, you know, when we're looking at this, you guys, it says, all right, hold on one second here. New research from the NMFTA gets to the heart of the chameleon ELD epidemic, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has taken notice. NMFTA's COO, Joe Orr, he's been on the show a bunch, told Overdrive that the organization has uncovered a network of hundreds of white label devices, or technically similar but differently named ELDs registered with the FMCSA. The association kicked off the research after hearing from drivers and carriers like those that Overdrive has reported on and in the Super Ego Chameleon Carrier Network. It's something of an open secret that the ELD, broadly intended as tampering-proof upgrade to paper logs, has been compromised. Now, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, all completely related to this. I have no way of proving this at this time, but my end of the road theory, this might take a couple of years for all of this data to come out. My very bold prediction is that the people who are running the ELD frauds are owning the same trucking companies who are in this chameleon carrier network, who are all insured by the same providers, and they're all probably owned by the same handful of people. I bet by the time they're able to uncover all of this stuff, and it takes a long time, right? Because like these guys aren't just dumb with their digital footprint. Like it takes time to uncover a lot of this. I would not be surprised in a couple of years if it is all connected to the same handful of bad actors. I don't know the amount, but I would not be surprised if it's all connected to the same people. It's just a giant web, and they're all interconnected, and they've infiltrated the FMCSA, and they have just found a way to make this work, right? Because our own FMCSA has made it very easy for them to operate like this. Now, last week, I also broke down an article on the show about like how each truck, like, could you have multiple ELD devices in there? And some a driver on, I think it was TikTok, commented, or one of those platforms. He had broke it down because, again, you guys, like I always like to say, I'm not a driver, right? So like I'm not out there. I don't know the ins and outs of every single operation inside of the cab of a truck. I'm familiar with it, but I had brought it up like, hey, if I was thinking like a criminal, I would probably want to do this. And this driver, who clearly is an ethical driver, laid it out how it was impossible. But like, the more I read that comment, the more I thought, well, just because you wouldn't do it that way doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't do that way. And inside of this article, they're breaking it down, right? Like, I don't think it's as complex as people think. And like I was saying on that show last week, if I were to think like a criminal, that is probably what I would do. Because if you're looking at digital bills of lading, if you're looking at the digital footprint, it's very easily manipulated. And just because you wouldn't do it doesn't mean that others are out there wouldn't do that. And then furthermore, if you thought of a way how it wouldn't work, who's to say that somebody couldn't reverse engineer it and make that work, right? Again, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I just think like at times, just because we wouldn't commit the crime doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who wouldn't, and they wouldn't make that work. But if you look at this, again, back into this firmware and software code analysis revealed that dozens of seemingly unique, independently branded ELD providers listed on there are running an identical copied code base. So essentially, when they say white label, there's software companies out there, you guys, that like license their product. All right. So they have the base of it built, and then they let people onto their system. Look at like Microsoft Office, for example, how we all operate off of that, or like an AI platform. We don't own Google, Gemini, but like you can build shit within Gemini and sell that, right? So that's what they're essentially saying here. And then this shared digital infrastructure creates a severe systemic risk. It allows bad actors to manipulate hours of service, bypass federal safety oversights, and leave carriers vulnerable to cyber attacks. Furthermore, if the FMCSA bans one non-compliant brand, the exact same flawed software can easily persist under multiple other reskinned brand names. So, like, again, that's an angle where you can get in there and like that's how it's done. All right. Like, and they lay out the framework inside of this article here. So, it's not just about a few rogue operators overall anymore, you guys. I think dozens of completely separate ELD brands share the exact same backend. All right. The exact same software architecture and all the exact same security vulnerabilities, right? So again, if you're looking at just a small network of people who are doing it, you have one code, and then you create like 15 different or 20 different companies under that, all using the same thing. But now you have ABC ELD company, EFG ELD company, and so on and so forth, but they're all operating under the same one. And if you get the same network of fraudulent actors all operating off of the one, and then that one the FMCSA finds out that gets compromised, then ironically, they all jump over to the next one, and then they just start going down the road. The same thing goes on with authorities, right? How some people have 35 different MCs. Hypothetical example, one MC gets compromised, boom, they all fire up under the next one, and so on and forth. They reincarnate overnight. So again, I think it's probably the same handful of bad actors. I think that's the end game of what the data will eventually get to. And this is another thing too, the self-certification process. That is a major gap out there. And again, I don't know the ins and outs of it. At this point, it could be fixed. I didn't look into it before the show this morning, but the self-certification, I'm the last one to talk about more government at all. But like in these specific examples, you guys, like, I think like we've allowed this to happen is all I'll say with that. And, the NMFTA's firmware teardowns prove that these shadow networks are explicitly engineered to allow drivers or foreign dispatchers to bypass legal hours of service thresholds undetected, i.e. somebody can go in there and just reset your hours every single day, right? You can go in there and reset it. And again, if you look at the old days of, paper logs and everything, the old man's passed away. He had like 5 logbooks, all right? He had 5 logbooks when he was driving. Everything was fucking filled out differently. If there's a will, there's a way. And then it goes on to talk about the reskinning loophole. If federal regulators crack down and, so again, it's like they just rebrand. That's back to the whole self-certification needing to go away. And this is how this is allowed to go in there and independently change essentially overnight. And then again, if we're looking at from a cybersecurity perspective, I know a lot of people don't think about that, especially if you're an independent operator. I think that at times we have a false sense of what, like, oh, I'm a small business, no one would go after me. On the contrary, it's a lot easier to steal $100 from 1,000 people than $1 million from one. So again, like if they can get in there, if they can find a way and they can compromise your truck, you guys, like I've seen trucks get hacked live. Like it's insane what they can do. And then on top of it, all of the, a very basic cyber criminal needs is they get access to your ELDs. If anything's sent over, they can just patch their way in. And before you know it, they're in your company's financials. They're in your customers' financials potentially. It's wild what can be done behind the scenes. And these guys can just sit there and wait and wait and wait because all they got is time, right? State-sponsored terrorism is what I think is going to come out from a lot of this as well. I think that if you are an asset-based carrier out there, you need to audit your in-cab hardware like immediately. You need to double check who you're utilizing for a lot of this stuff. Again, I'm not associated with any ELD providers or telematics providers. Obviously DAT has a telematics product, like with trucker tools and stuff like that. I'm looping that in there, but for like an asset-based telematics, I would be very much vetting them with a lot of this stuff that's coming to light here, you guys. I would just hate to see somebody get looped into this because they bought the wrong ELD provider and they're fraudulently operating, and it could potentially shut their business down if this ELD company gets shut down, and then you're not part of the reincarnation crew that goes on to the next one. You could be out of business or have a non-working product, and then you're stuck on the side of the road. You just never know. So again, I would look into this one, you guys. This article from overdriveonline.com, the white label ELD cheater network uncovered in NMFTA research, I think is just the tip. Just see it just for a second. It's just the tip of the iceberg of what I truly think is going to come out as things continue to get uncovered in a lot of this, right? Because it's your digital identity of your company is everywhere, and the risk of you being compromised is only growing by the day. Next article, freightwaves.com. Highway post Montgomery requiring ELD hookups for all carriers. It says in a mass, hold on, my computer. There we go. What is reportedly a small percentage of carriers that are vetted through the highway compliance system are facing a looming requirement to hook up their ELD to the company system. July 5th is the deadline. Obviously, today's the 6th. And the policy is a direct response after the Supreme Court decision that came down. And then it said brokers are requesting heightened visibility into motor truck carriers they hire to haul loads, according to the memo supplied to FreightWaves and confirmed by Highway. More and more brokers will be demanding validation that the carriers booked on a load is the carrier picking up the load. Highway has grown sharply in recent years, and its product aims to provide a high level of assurance to brokers that they are dealing with the carrier they hired to move this one. And then, according to Highway, 90% in the Highway system already have their ELD connected into the company. That has seemingly been done in my operation for a while now. And then I think that, okay, hold on. Okay, some brokers were okay with not connecting. Okay, asked why a carrier in the Highway system previously would not have chosen to connect its ELD. Every broker had a different level of requirements, and then some may not have mandated that a carrier that they onboard needed its ELD connected. The broker always reserves the right to load whoever they want, they said, which I think is a very key point out there. So, a large carrier with a stellar reputation and other means of assuring brokers of its legitimacy may not need the ELD hookup, she said, but the broker may keep the requirement in place for the ones who they are more sure of, and then Graf said, brokers still often push for visibility with carriers they know and with the ELD connection. I look at, we personally utilize Highway inside of our system, inside of our company. I look at with what's coming down with this. And again, this is something that we've been doing for a long time now. I know there are some ELD exemptions out there for the 1999 and older engine models or in VIN numbers and stuff like that. But, I look at with where things are. My only fear with some of these pushes is will this eventually deter a carrier from wanting to work with a broker? And again, I could make a ton of different arguments here on both sides of it. But is this going to cause a resistance out there where carriers are going to refuse to work with brokers? And then are they going to walk back requirements like that? And I've been saying this for years on this show is it's like requirements only work in certain markets. And then do those requirements get laxed when capacity tightens up? And are you willing to look the other way to get the load covered? Again, like I'm not saying that highway is mandated any of this stuff, but like I know how brokers think. I've been a broker for a very long time. And I know how some people are going to operate and choose to operate. And I think that rules are broken constantly. And circumstantially, everything sounds great in a perfect controlled world where everything's picking up on time and delivering on time. But how are you going to operate? How are you going to operate if you're failing on a load? What are you going to do if the only truck that is remotely interested in your shipment doesn't pass the sniff test, but you're like, fuck it, I'll roll the dice and send them in anyways? Again, there's very real conversations that are had out there on the brokerage floor that don't make it out to the media and social media. And are you going to be the one who's going to be willing to lax your requirements? Now, Chris Jolly, personally, my operation, and I only speak for myself, under no circumstances are we going to look the other way. All right. Requirements are there for a reason. If you don't have a designated safety person or a designated compliance person who onboards the carriers, like I think like that would be a logical first step. If you're an operation that allows the carrier reps or the sales manager to set up carriers and they're somehow directly tied to the shipment, I would advise that you have somebody who's not related to the actual emotional transaction itself vet carriers. Again, I don't know everybody's operation. I'm sure some of you are hearing this. Like, of course, we have a compliance department that doesn't apply to us, but maybe you don't have a compliance department. I think with what we're seeing now is you need to have somebody who is not emotionally or financially tied to that shipment running compliance or setting up carriers. I truly feel that way because I know what it's like when you're struggling to cover a load. I know what it's like when the only option you have is for a loss, or maybe you got lucky and this is the only winning option you have, but like things don't clearly check out. It's one of those situations where you need somebody who is not emotionally connected to the transaction to have the hard stop call on it, because otherwise that's how things slip between the cracks, right? And I think like we're just at a point in time with a lot of this, you guys, where it's like, I just don't understand why you would roll the dice. I really don't. I really don't understand why you'd roll the dice, especially after the article that we just broke down about the NMFTA and the fraudulent ELD providers and stuff that are out there. The digital footprint is very, very deep at this point, you guys. And sometimes when organizations show you how they really are, you should probably pay attention to that. And I think that if they're out, like my number one thing, you guys, is if somebody calls in, and this is why I don't really like working with dispatch services, is because I've heard this multiple times over the years. Oh, that MC didn't work. Try this one. Again, that's like the biggest red flag to me. But again, if the digital footprint of the carrier doesn't align, they have safety violations, it doesn't matter. I would rather, and again, and I live by this, my businesses live by this. I would rather lose a customer for telling them the truth than keep one on a lie. And then the ramifications that potentially come down by turning a blind eye to choosing the wrong carrier in today's environment is just not worth it, you guys. It's not worth it at all. I would highly, highly advise, if you do not have a compliance department, or if create a compliance person, have one person who is not associated with the load, set up carriers and vet them, and do it that way. Remove the carrier rep, the customer rep, or the sales manager, or whomever from the transaction. If you don't, that would just be my advice. Again, I'm not here to tell anybody that they're wrong. That's what I would do if I didn't have it. After hearing a lot of the stuff that's been coming down lately, I would want that plausible thing in place, you guys. And then there has to be set parameters, no exceptions. If they're not willing to do X, do not set them up under any circumstances. And again, I think that it hasn't happened yet, but eventually when a shipper gets pulled into a lawsuit and a shipper potentially goes out of business because they ultimately loaded the truck and allowed it to happen. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's only a matter of time before some of these shippers get pulled in to these lawsuits, and then they're going to lose and they're going to have to shell out millions and millions of dollars. That's when I think it's going to become an even bigger thing. And like I've said all along, unfortunately, the next lawsuit that comes about, that's the one I'm paying more attention to on it, because a lot of things can happen here, you guys. But again, yeah, that article, freightwaves.com, that is going to be it, you guys. We didn't get to the third one, but as always, you guys, all the links to the articles are put up in the show notes. I really, really, really want you guys to do your own research on it. There's a ton of free tools out there. My podcast is free. You can literally go back and listen to all the episodes. I think I do a pretty good job of labeling them for what the topic is. But again, you guys, that's going to be it for today. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm get to the bag. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane move.